everybody, and welcome back to Podcana episode 67. We are here off the back of the Toronto Disney Lorcana Challenge, in which Kala was able to attend, and we watched from afar. It was a very interesting metagame. It was not the set 5 metagame, it was set 4 with an eroded Bucky, so keen to hear how that went. Massive tournament at that. Other than that, we've been sort of practicing with the set 5 cards, trying to test when we can. Definitely feeling the loss of some accessibility platforms. So, yeah, not playing as much as we would like to, but yeah, hopefully diving into the weeds of set 5 and figuring out sort of where this metagame goes after we sunset set 4 with the Toronto Disney Lorcana Challenge. Anyway, Kala, you attended the tournament. You flew all the way across the pond. How'd it go?
It was a lot of fun. I have to say it was extremely well run. There was not a hiccup in the event. Canada is what everybody says. Like, they've like the nicest people ever. Everyone was so polite. I don't think I faced one like even semi-rude opponent, unpleasant opponent. Everyone was super nice. So yeah, shout out to Diego, or level 9001. He was the winner of the Toronto Challenge. And I'm very happy that he won, especially because he played Lemon Lime. That makes me feel, I think I brought a good deck choice. Myself and Brendan kind of discussed this color combination on the last podcast, and we kind of thought, initially I thought it was kind of like a meme deck, but the more I played it, the more I respected it, understood the play patterns, stuff like that. So yeah, huge shout out to Diego for taking it home. Diego actually messaged me on Twitter before this episode went live, and he said, Kawa, if you happen to be talking about my deck on the podcast, I want to let you know that the reason I ran 61 cards in my deck is specifically just to annoy Brendan. Just in case we'd pick up on that. So
that's wild. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't even know that.
Did it work, Brendan? Are you annoyed?
Well, to influence, because I had such an influence on the deck building, I do think you owe me some royalties.
Take a couple of those enchanteds from the binder. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Is it really 61 cards? I didn't know.
Well, I have the list. I have the deck list in front here, Moyen. So if you want to count the cards individually, please.
Did it to annoy me, and just
and
happens to actually annoy Moyen.
That pisses me off so much.
But yeah, okay. So kind of jumping into the challenge. I'm going to do a quick recap here. First thing I want to say is thank you so much, everybody who came up and said hello to me. It was I was overwhelmed with support, honestly. It was so nice to see. Brendan told me when I go to one of these NA challenges that there'd be a lot of people who would recognize me. And I'm like, nah, there won't. I didn't really believe it, right? And it was there was a lot, and I was really happy to say hello to everybody. Some people would just be like, oh, hi Kawa, give me like a fist bump or something like that. Got to have a chat with some of you guys. I can't talk about stories from everybody I met, but there are two people I wanna mention. Not that they asked for the shout out. These are just two stories I want to highlight from the event. So the first person, I have an image here so Brendan and Mike can see. First person is Kelsey, one of the judges at the event. Super friendly. First thing he said to me was he was like, all of your content is super helpful in everything I've done for Lorcana. I think he said he used to be a competitive card game player. He stopped because he didn't really like competing that much. He kind of turned into judging instead. But he talked to me a little about some of his like set 5 meta predictions and stuff. He really liked Clarabelle initially when some people weren't too sure. And apparently, I think it was Clarabelle that he mentioned that he was saying a certain reasoning to his friends, and he opened the podcast the next day, and Moyen said the exact same reasoning. So he felt very validated to be on the same mind as Moyen. So he was super friendly throughout the entire event, super helpful. And the next person that we have is Angel. Angel actually got the top 16 qualification, and he's the person who 2-0'd me. He 2-0'd me in game. It's probably the most memorable match I will ever remember in a Disney Lorcana game, or a Disney Lorcana challenge rather. So I faced Ruby Amethyst. I felt pretty confident. It was a decent matchup. My first game, I had a strong start. I was discarding some of his stuff, but I ultimately lost the game due to the fact that I kind of turbo discarded his hand, but I had no Prince John on the board, so I just eventually ran out of cards. And between me discarding 2 of his B preps, he top decked a B prep when he needed it, and then he top decked the 4th B prep when he needed it. So that was very fun. But the second game will go down in history as my craziest game in a Disney Lorcana challenge. I was on 19 lore. This man was on 0, and he won the game. He won the game.
That's your favorite though. You love that. I feel like we've heard those from you before.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, bro. But basically, yeah. So he B preps my board, I have nothing in hand. All I need is one character to stick. Bear in mind, I've got ward characters. I've got a Prince John. I've got muses. So, I top deck a card. It's a song. Draw another card. It's a song. Draw another card. It's a song. In between this, he's doing castle and ghosts and rabbits and stuff like that, slowly gaining lore. I get an aerial. He top decks a brawl. Kills my aerial. I get another aerial. Plays Medusa. Kills my aerial. And that's the game. So, yeah, we had a great laugh about it. But the funniest thing about all of it was before we sat down, he says, "Oh, Cowie, you're from the podcast. I love your content. Do you mind if we get a picture at the end of the game?" And by the end of the game, this man could see the pure frustration on my face. And he says, "Yo, man, do you mind if we still take that picture?" So I found that to be quite funny because I thought he thought that I wasn't going to take a picture with him. But I'm not that much of an asshole. So, yeah, shout out to Angel. I think this is his first TCG that he's played. And he got the top 16 qual, which is great to see. So lots of memories from the event. Everyone was super nice, like I said. And yeah, everyone was asking about you guys. Where's Brendan? Where's Moyen? So be sure to say hello to definitely Moyen. Moyen secured his ticket for Seattle. Brendan's on the wait list. I was jet lagged. I didn't even wake up for the ticket, so I'm on the wait list too. But we'll see what happens. After the such an amazing time I had at that event, I really want to come to Seattle now. So if we can get tickets,
yeah,
we'll try.
I feel like it makes me sound like, I don't know. Obviously, it's not fair. But like, part of me is like, God damn it, why can't? I wish that they would let us buy tickets, like as Podcana, so like as like a I don't know, because they do special stuff for like outside influencers and things like that. Like I just know that from behind the scenes. And I was like, it's like, damn, I wish they would like let us buy tickets to the events, which I know is not fair because everybody's trying to get tickets.
I mean,
man, it's like fucking so annoying.
I don't really agree with that in terms of I don't think we should get special streaming because it's the same for everyone. I saw so many people on Twitter saying, yeah, like literally sold out in 2 minutes. I was there. I just couldn't get my ticket.
I'm just so over the whole fucking lottery thing. It's really starting to annoy me because I'm there, you know, it's in my cart, and you know I waited in line with the Ticketmaster thing or the Eventbrite thing, and then I don't get it, and it's like, damn, it just sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish they had a better set. Like, I don't even know. Like,
yeah, be careful.
Did they sell 2K right there? Like, was that 2K? Was that 1K? Like, what was that?
It was 2K.
It was 2K.
Yeah.
Fuck. Dude.
Yep. I'm just a little careful about these things because for example in One Piece their biggest tournament series right now is raffle only.
Mhm.
So whereas okay, at least you have to be very very quick and on time to get these tickets. But for example, I didn't get a ticket for like the biggest tournament series in One Piece just purely based on chance. And to me that feels even worse. Even I guess technically it's more fair to give everyone equal chance.
Yeah, honestly, Podcana, not Podcana, fucking whatever it is. I just wish that I could buy a goddamn ticket at this point. Like I literally don't care. Yeah. I literally don't care what card I have to pull. Like, come on.
I have a question for you, Brendan, and I think a lot of people were asking me about this as well. I'm gonna call you out a little bit here. A lot of people were saying, I thought Brendan wanted to compete originally. I thought Brendan was gonna win one of these Mickeys. So, if you got offered the casting gig for Seattle, would you take it or would you want to play?
I would definitely say no now.
Now. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would definitely say no.
I think a lot of
or I would give like some like I would ask for something ridiculous
number. Yeah.
Ask for something ridiculous.
But you don't have a ticket for Seattle, so if
I know, so now it's different.
Yeah. To be fair, the one thing I'll say is everyone was so disappointed. Some people thought you might have been casting Toronto, so everyone loves you up on the desk. So it would be nice to have you back.
The only way any of you can influence that or change that is to let them know with your words, because
bro, I feel like everyone I met at the event was literally like, why isn't Brendan casting again?
Well, it's like a lot of those things, they're strategic decisions. So, and it's not even correct or incorrect, but if you think that it's more valuable to have like a certain archetype of caster on the broadcast, you need to let them know that, because their default is not, is clearly, I don't know if it's clearly, but it might not be that. Their default might be, okay, we think our audience is more angled towards this kind of approach. And if you disagree with that, the only way for them to get that feedback is for you to let them know. Because what I think is correct and what you think is correct, what Moyen think is correct, and maybe what a lot of our listeners do, might not be what the actuality of it all is.
I know what's incorrect. And that is
And,
61 cards in Ember Emerald. That is not correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you want that stuff to change, you have to let them know. Like
I also
with your
thought
words,
it
for
might have
sure.
been for Toronto, since it's a smaller event. Like they had less casters than what they would usually have for the 2K player events. So-
Yeah, that does tend to happen, which is interesting, because you would think that they would potentially increase the budget with how successful these things are, especially if you do the math on like entry fee and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Like Tarek did it on Twitter and related it to pricing, but yeah, they actually tend to cut the budgets tend to get smaller over time, which was my experience with Flesh and Blood, but yeah. I definitely do want to compete. Like Lorcana is really the only card game that I super enjoy competitively right now. I think I took the gig in Dallas because of like some external conditions regarding like a new job and starting to get set up for a new move, so I didn't have chance to practice
Prep
as
time and
much.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, which that's a priority thing. So maybe I could have not done that. I do think that ultimately, after not because I didn't get the game for Toronto, it was probably a incorrect decision, because I mean, it's just how it goes. Like if you wanna play regionals or whatever I forget what it's called, whatever the top 16 is qualifying you for, you need to play as many as possible. It's a numbers game. So, yeah.
Did you get a ticket for Vegas, Brendan?
I did get a ticket for Vegas.
Cool.
But I would like to go to Seattle because I would be West Coast now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just it's gonna be easier for you to get to realistically. So
I just want give me a ticket to Seattle, please. Please, anything.
We're traveling over the entire.
yeah, Brendan's like, oh, I have to travel so far. I mean, Moyen crossing oceans, crossing the world. But
yeah, I feel like every time I sit on a plane for more than a couple hours, I physically age. So
yeah.
it's.
But
not a
you
fan.
always physically age.
I know, but at a faster rate, at an alarmingly fast rate.
All right. The one thing I want to mention here quickly before we get into the set 5 discussion and stuff like that. If you guys are wondering where we get a lot of our, we look at like tournament deck lists and stuff. I do want to give a shout out to inkdex.com. They have a section on their website where they basically kind of report a lot of tournaments that happen every weekend and stuff like that. So if you guys are looking for some inspiration for some deck lists, or if you ever want to, I mean, we'll always have deck lists linked in the description. But if you want to just see where a lot of tournament deck lists are, definitely go to inkdex.com. They're really, really good. And of course, dreamborn.inc is a great deck builder site as well. Moyen, before we move into talking about set 5 and also covering this building section, do you want to maybe talk through the breakdown, the meta breakdown for Toronto, just really briefly? Because it is quite interesting. It is kind of what I predicted a little bit, but I think there was probably a deck that was maybe a little bit more correct to bring than people actually initially anticipated. So
yeah, so I think the meta game of Bucky's gone now, but it's the same set. How does the meta game shift from here, from what people thought was mostly figured out, is extremely interesting. I think the level 1 thinking would be, okay, Ruby Amethyst was already insane, or was already a very good deck. Now the worst matchup's gone. It should just get better. But I think it was also the deck that everyone just was prepared to beat and maybe tagged their deck to beat. Ember Steel drastically rose in popularity as a good deck that also happens to beat Ruby Amethyst. So in the end, Ruby Amethyst actually shit the bed again. And I don't think that was really expected. So Ruby Amethyst was the most played deck, 22% of the field in Toronto, and only 20% of top 64 was actually Ruby Amethyst, so it's slightly underperformed, as did a lot of decks. The two decks that drastically overperformed were Ember Steel and Sapphire Steel. I think Ember Steel, it's very understandably how it could thrive in this field of so much Ruby Amethyst. But still, there was a lot. There was 11% Ruby Sapphire. There was 7% Sapphire Steel. It was still I think I still didn't expect it to perform this well. And then Sapphire Steel must have somehow found a good matchup into Ruby Amethyst and Ember Steel to put up the same number. So both Ember Steel, for both Ember Steel and Sapphire Steel, more than 10% of the players playing it also ended up being in the top cut.
I feel like looking at this data, if I was to zoom out, I think that the one of the solutions would you take something like Ruby Sapphire, Sapphire Steel deck, you add 1 to 2 Judy Hops, you'd have been prepared for that metagame. Yeah, I was just looking at some of these Amber Steel decks, they're all running the 4 flutes, which makes sense against Ruby Amethyst. I think that deck is well positioned versus Ruby Amethyst. The first thing I think when I see an Amber Steel like overperforming is like, okay, where are the Sapphire decks at, especially something like Sapphire Ruby. But yeah, they just did not perform quite as well. Looks like we had, the flute package was on display, and Ruby Amethyst is just historically quite weak to that package. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to see a metagame do that. I'll tell you, playing a lot of Flesh and Blood, for years, and debatably even right now, when you look at a metagame, an unknown metagame, it's often incorrect to go level 2. Usually kind of always go level 1. You're like, okay, people are going to play the best deck, and, I should probably just play the best deck too. And like level 2 is like, okay, people are going to play the best deck. I'll play the deck that beats the best deck. That is now, is new, due to the new conditions, is now in a different position, kind of almost an untested position. And I think that Amber Steel, wow, just a historically powerful deck and a deck that people are familiar with, I think it was a bit of a level 2 pick, which is kind of crazy to see it show up in such force and also pay off so well. So I'm surprised that this many players were able to kind of have that heads up foresight to bring something that well positioned.
I think it was a great pick, honestly. Like I was really considering at the last moment. I remember before I locked in my deck choice, I remember I messaged Frank Carson. I was like, Frank, you want to just hit me up your list just in case I decide to switch last minute? Because I actually thought that Amber Steel was the stronger bring coming into this tournament. If you expect that there's going to be so much Ruby Amethyst, I think it was an incredibly strong pick, which is really interesting then for my deck choice, because I played Amber Emerald because I really anticipated a lot of Ruby Amethyst to be there. I wanted to be strong against that, but then interestingly, Amber Steel against Amber Emerald, in my opinion, I think it's actually quite unfavored. It can get close if you discard the right songs at the right time, you get your Under the Sea combo off, but I think overall Amber Steel should be winning that matchup realistically. So I also think that Ruby Sapphire, like, so from the data it did like underperform, but I think it was actually quite a good deck pick if you anticipated a lot of Amber Steel as well. It's hard because yes, you'd have to dodge all of those Ruby Amethyst or at least try and tech a little bit for those Ruby Amethyst matchups, but if you really thought that Amber Steel was going to come out in force to counter all of these Ruby Amethyst decks, we did see some Sapphire Steel Sapphire Ruby actually make it into the top cut. So like I think that's, if you're prepared to face a lot of Ruby Amethyst as well, I think that was a very strong bring as well. So I'm just happy to see Amber Emerald in the top 4 realistically. I didn't expect it to be in the top 4. So
yeah. How favored do you think Ruby Sapphire is into Amber Steel if Amber Steel's running the 4 flute package and Ruby Sapphire has no additional tech cards for it? Like, I think it's still favored, but how close do you think that matchup is?
it's probably a Moyen question, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
one Judy Hops in the fucking top Ruby Sapphire list. Let's go.
If Moyen hears Judy Hops out of your mouth one more time, he's gonna explode, I think.
I
Yeah.
hate that card. For this meta, I probably would have bought one. But I would have hated myself for doing it, but I would still have done it. I think without Judy Hops against 4 flutes, you're probably like 52 to 54% ish, like very slightly favored still. So I think I would have bought 1 Judy, maybe 2, probably not. And then I think Pegasus
play the Hercules if you anticipate so much Ruby Amethyst, do you think?
Well, maybe still 1, but not necessarily. If this is actually less Ruby Amethyst than, I think this is less Ruby Amethyst than at the tournaments before, right? We had like 20,
it was pretty much 25%, about a quarter, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like basically the same, even a little bit less. So maybe 1 Hercules, maybe 0. But I think very important, if you were to have bought Ruby Sapphire, is that you play Pegasus as your 2-drop to contest the Diablo and Amber Emerald. Against Emerald Steel, that never was a viable game plan. But with Amber Emerald being the fourth most played deck, I think you just play Pegasus on 2.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Din's list, which, by the way, that's crazy. He got 5th. This is kind of on a tear. Still playing one Dig a Little Deeper.
Apparently the card came in insanely clutch. I was talking to the guy who he knocked out after the top 16. He was like, yeah, I had the game. He had Dig a Little Deeper, found exactly what he needed, and he won the game. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So I helped work with Tarek Patel, who top 32'd on his Ruby Amethyst list and lead up to the event. And we were talking a lot about some last minute additions to the deck. He was on like 4 B prep, 4 Medusa. I'm trying to go find his exact list here. There it is.
He went to 12 1-drops, yeah.
Yeah, so 12 1-drops, which I think is actually okay. But he was like, oh, if you would change anything, like we started talking about some crazy cards. But he's like, what about the Akos Sisu? What about like a Lady Tremaine? I was like, if you're expecting Ruby Amethyst to be the most played deck, the last cards that you want in your deck are, I think, Akos Sisu, and especially Lady Tremaine. It's freaking terrible. He's like, oh, what about Tamato? I was like, that's a B preps before. It's like, we talked about what would we change. I was like, maybe cut 1 B prep, maybe cut one of these 3 drops or 4 drops, the can dripping one, and maybe just like 1 brawl or something like that. One of these kind of like cards that are filling up the last few slots. And I was like, I had this. I don't know if the general sentiment of Ruby Amethyst had been, thinking about this in the lead up to the event, but I hadn't heard it from anybody else. I was like, I think we should add a couple crabs. First, thinking about where it's going to be a ton of Ruby Amethyst mirrors. The ability, like the equity to be able to one bang a castle that comes down is just super good. And to be able to trade some of those 1-drops, and with that Pascal can help you with Diablo.
Oh yeah,
all of this.
That's against my deck. So in the last little bit of testing that I did with Tarek, he threw in the crabs and the Pascal. I just got rinsed. Anytime I Diablo, so before it was like, oh, the brawl answers Diablo, right? As soon as Pascal hit the field, I'm like, okay, even I think I cut Cove eventually from my list, but even with the Cove, I was just like, Pascal just absolutely wrecks me if he has the crab. Like, there's actually nothing I can do. So
I thought I was hitting a little copium there, because I was like, damn, I really used to like the crab. It seems really good in the mirror. It's like maybe the crab's been power crept out of the format. And lo and behold, like that, it did show up in a lot of these sort of top lists. And I think Tarek had mentioned that he would have put it in the list if he ran it back. So yeah, I mean, I think that crab was one of those cards that we had on our radar, but we ultimately had put in. But I think the fundamentals of it were like, okay, if you're expecting a lot of Ruby Amethyst, I'd rather have my sort of effective cards be at the lower end of the curve. And even if I do sort of, if Tamatoa is just a very good card against me, whatever, so be it. So be it. We've been on the philosophy for a long time where it's like, okay, I don't have answers to Tamatoa outside of my 3 B prepareds on my list. Do I need to add Tremaine? No, because Tremaine is just so dog shit in like so many other situations.
Yeah, I think the 4 Pascals are pretty good in the mirror. They just give this very efficient threat. I think if you would have wanted to attack more for the mirror, I would play less B prep, maybe even less Medusa. Medusa is not a great 4-off in that matchup. And then I think you play a few crabs, and on top of that, I think you play a few Cuscos as well.
That's what I was suggesting.
Yeah.
Dude, that was the 2 suggestions I had, was the 2-cost Cusco.
Cusco was insane against me. The person I lost to, the Ruby Amethyst player, he had Cuscos in his deck, and I think it really helped him get the answers that he needed, just trying to close out the game, honestly. He even told me, he said there's so many games where he would just quest with the Cusco, and his opponents just didn't want him to draw cards. He's like, my Cusco just kept gaining lore because my opponent didn't want to hit it, Yeah,
it's so I think all of this meta knowledge will stay super relevant in set 5 and set 5.
For sure.
There's also red purple, green purple, and a lot of them are meta dependently also going back to building around Cuscos and crabs.
I just think that's funny that because Moyen and I did not talk about this. We were on like the exact same wavelength for how to potentially tweak this Ruby Amethyst deck and lead up to this tournament. That's funny because those are the 2 cards that I was lobbying for and testing for the past like 2 weeks. But their position in the metagame was dubious because they were good in the Ruby Amethyst mirror, but then just considering some of the other matchups, it's like, is Cusco what I want to be doing in a potentially in a field that has a lot of these ramp decks and things like that, and etc. But interesting.
You could have just talked to me. We probably would have
Well, I ended
Well,
up
he
not
didn't go to
playing.
the
If
tournament, so
if
it
I
didn't
played,
fucking matter, did it? Yeah.
if I played, I would have I would have been in those DMs. Don't get me wrong. We would have cooked up some crab Cusco soup.
All right. So with that, we're gonna head into the spilled ink section. This is our listener questions section. If you guys want to have your questions read out on the podcast, be sure to leave a comment down below. Starting off with Hunter Surge says, I think the answer to fixing bad color combos without breaking the color pie is you just print dual color cards that can only be used if you are running both colors. Do you know what's very funny? Zan said this exact same thing to me this weekend. He's like, I wonder if they're gonna do like dual color cards soon.
I think they will. So, like, if you look at it in perpetuity, like, yeah, they're probably going to explore that design space. Will they also do colorless cards? Maybe. I think those can be a bit troublesome. You know, Magic had some issues with colorless cards, but yeah, I think they will explore all of those angles.
Oh, okay.
Eventually,
I probably shouldn't say this, but you know what? We say stuff on this podcast that we probably shouldn't say all the time. So
I don't.
Not me. Nuh-uh. I don't know who you're talking about.
I think this is fine because I'm sure this like it's not like that crazy, to be honest. But basically, one of the players, I think it was one of the top 16 players I was talking to. They were playing during their match, and like they exerted their ink, obviously to play their cards or whatever. I think it was during the opponent's turn. Like they just like slightly turned it back to kind of get ready to basically for it to be passed back to them so they could play. And the judge was just like, oh, can you just make sure that you leave your ink exerted? And he was like, yeah, no, like, of course. But it's like, it doesn't really matter like that much, does it? And the judge was kind of like, it might matter soon. Like, it might be relevant soon.
Nah, I don't think the judge... There's no way. There's no way a judge would... No, there's
Why would
almost
the judge
no way
know anything?
Judge would not know that, and that would be a complete rework of the entire game system. And I don't think that we're ever going to get instant speed interaction. I think it's like a core fundamental to the game sort of.
You think we're going to get ink destruction?
Would we get
God,
ink
I
destruction?
hope not, man. God,
I
hope
hope so. I hope
What?
so. I love that
Bro,
stuff.
you maniac.
Zero sum fun, baby. So yeah, maybe ink destruction. So it's like if ink is exerted,
Yeah.
you can destroy exerted ink. Yeah, I could see that. I thought you were referring to instant speed and stuff like that. But yeah,
I don't think they're going to introduce that. And if they do, it will be like very far down the line. But I think the idea is they want to keep this game like simple, and doing things in your opponent's turn is not very, I don't know, like friendly to
it would be a different game.
Stuff, right?
Completely different game, like a phasing system. Like it'd be I would bet everything that it will not happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Next comment rather is from Beard. With discard nerfed in set 4, Red, Purple, Steel Song will have such an easier time winning games. I mean,
Yes.
It's true, but like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this because obviously it's a deck I played. Amber Emerald, right? Like that is a deck now that you can still pretty much turbo discard your opponent's hand. But does it feel as unfair as when Bucky was in the game? I don't think so. I think it feels maybe a little bit unfair when there's a Prince John on the board, you can't interact with it, and they're just like drawing all of these cards. But like the most thing that can happen is like, okay, they can potentially discard 3 cards from my hand this turn. And yes, that is a lot. They go for the You've Forgotten Me, and then they sing the Sudden Chill with the snake or something like that, right? And like that's a little bit frustrating to play against. But like I think that's the type of discard deck, or the discard kind of fundamentals. I feel like right now that's the max that we're gonna see is like You've Forgotten Me stuff, because I hope they've learned their lesson with Bucky, because Bucky was like, the potential for Bucky, it's just like, it's you have to remember, so like when you have Prince John on the board and you do discard stuff, it's really good because as you're getting rid of their stuff, you're also gaining stuff. And the thing that made Bucky so good is it's not like you're just discarding their cards. Like with every card you're discarding with Bucky, you're also establishing a body, which is like super, super relevant. So I feel like the discard sphere right now with like Amber Emerald potential, I still feel like, I'm sure people don't like playing against it, but I think, in my opinion, that's like a balanced way that discard's in right now. And I hope it doesn't really kind of tip over the scale again as much as it was with Bucky. I don't know about you guys. I know, Brendan, like, you're really not a fan of discard. Like, no one's a fan to play against discard. Let's be real. Nobody likes playing against discard. But I think Amber Emerald, it's like, because of like the whole Prince John line and what you're trying to do, I hope it like stays at that level. It doesn't go over that, you know.
Well, okay, so two things. I don't find. I mean, I think the good draw of Ember Emerald is also so different from their bad draw that can be a little, like the variance in that can be a little bit frustrating to play against. But to hit the comment from like a different perspective, they said, okay, Steel Song and Red Purple will just be insane when this gets nerfed in set 4. But I think Toronto was a great showing of how even with Bucky Iradat, there was still no top deck that had no weaknesses. It was still so contextual what deck performs well and so dependent on what the field is. You could not just predict before the turn. Okay, you could if you successfully predicted, yes, but there was no deck that was, regardless of the field, an insane bring. Every deck still had their weakness, and I think that's a very good sign for how healthy the meta was.
Yeah, for sure. Next comment is from Sultan, Spilled Ink. Alex Kocha had mentioned coming to Toronto and seeking your advice for what deck to run. As a player who myself started my card game journey in Marvel Snap and now have found great success playing Lorcana, what fundamentals should I look to advise Snap players to carry over to Lorcana if some of my friends join me based on what you've told Alex? So for those of you who don't know, I actually stayed with Alex the previous weekend. He lives just outside of Toronto. I gave him your deck to play, Moyen. So he had a lot of fun. To be honest, I think he was just really enjoying himself. Like, there's just nothing to say badly about Alex, but obviously his first time really playing a big tournament. Didn't perform the greatest, but I think what he really enjoyed was with every game. Like it's very hard. Like you can know how your deck works, but it's very hard to play a new card game and like literally every single opponent you're playing is. Sorry, cannot read your cards. I have no idea what deck you're playing, right? So it's very difficult to know. Okay, how am I realistically supposed to play this matchup? But he definitely found it interesting because the more he played with the deck, he understood. Like, I think he played one game against Ruby Amethyst, which is what your deck was kind of teched towards. Like, that's what you expected in Bologna. And he was like, oh, I can feel why these cards are in this deck, specifically against this deck. And then he felt like, oh, some of these cards are really bad in other matchups. But that's why there's the flexibility and you can ink them and stuff like that. So, I don't know, like, Brendan and Moyen, do you guys have any, like, particular advice for people? I think this is specifically saying coming from a game like Marvel Snap coming to Lorcana.
I think
just like
Snap fundamental applies to Lorcana.
So I think in Snap, like I guess, how much does like tempo mean in Snap compared to Lorcana? I think it's still like relevant. Like you want to be having like bodies on the board, but not as much as it would in a game like say like Magic or Hearthstone, right? The concepts are a little bit different.
Snap like curving out doesn't matter as much. Card advantage doesn't matter as much. What does matter is playing to your outs. I think that in Snap you play to your outs, and in Lorcana you play to your outs as well. And
you want to spend your resources and play to your outs. But so that's what they already know. So what's the new advice from what they wouldn't know?
It's a lot more complex than Marvel Snap. Let's just say that, right? Like there's a lot more
and stuff.
Yeah. But I think that's just like you'll get that the more you kind of play the game. You know what I mean? Like I will say, like a game like Hearthstone, you will have, if you've played Hearthstone for like even a few months, whatever, there will be a lot of card game fundamentals that you will have taken from a game like that over to Lorcana more so than Marvel Snap, because it is a very different type of card game. It's a fantastic card game, but it's just different to Lorcana. So I'd say just try, like, if you're trying to convince your friends to kind of come over and try this game out, like, I don't know, I think it's relatively easy to pick up, and then the more you play it, the more you'll find like the depth of the game, to be honest. So yeah, I had a great time with Alex this weekend. I think he had a great time too, so that was awesome. I got to basically see one of my friends experience Lorcana for the first time and kind of jump into it, and that was really exciting. Next comment is from Master. In response to the Mufasa being a bad card because it doesn't have a powerful impact when it hits the board, I honestly don't agree with that. This is in reference to what Brendan was saying last week. You mentioned Beast Tragic Hero as a good card, and that doesn't do anything when it's played unless you shift it and challenge, which defeats the part of the card draw. Tamatoa is another game-winning card that, while it does have an on-play ability, isn't game-winning. I think I agree more with Kawa that the right deck hasn't been found yet. Like Tamatoa or Beast, if Mufasa is left on board, then that could just win you the game. What do you think?
I have an answer to this. I saw this one actually pop up on my phone as a notification. So there's a couple false equivalencies that are being done here. So it's not that Mufasa's a bad card. It's that it's asking a lot. So Mufasa, I believe, it's like a 7 cost uninkable, right?
It's 8 costs, bro.
No.
8 cost
This
uninkable.
guy revealed Mufasa, and he is. Oh my god, bro.
8 cost uninkable, and it doesn't have an effect when it hits the board. So you'd
It
say,
does have
okay,
an
well,
effect when it hits the board, Brendan.
you say Beast also doesn't have an effect. Beast is a
I
5
said-
cost inkable.
I said it does have an effect when it hits the board.
Yeah, but the effect is like
It's
not
too
great.
add.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
But Beast is a 5 cost inkable. Like that's wildly different. It's a wildly different cost. Like coming down on turn 5, if you're trading with 5 cost removal or a 6 cost 2-for-1, like which is not great. It's not as bad as potentially investing 8 into something. Uninkable versus inkable, huge difference. Tamatoa, they mentioned Tamatoa doesn't recruit value. Yes, it does. Tamatoa has an insane, recurring that item back to your hand, playing it. It's going to be almost all like if I guess if Popsicle didn't exist, Tamatoa would not be as good. But in the context of Popsicle, Tamatoa enter the battlefield effect is crazy. Tamatoa hits the field, we draw another card, then, contextually might have a hero, draw more cards, then there's the Tamatoa loop, like that thing, and those are obviously
Tamatoa is inkable as well, yeah.
Yeah, also inkable. Both of these cards you mentioned are inkable. So Mufasa is an uninkable, and it has a not great effect when it hits the battlefield. And it costs, well, it doesn't cost more than Tamatoa, but it costs way more than Beast Tragic Hero, which I think is, I don't even think you could say Tamatoa doesn't have a great enter the battlefield effect. It has a great enter the battlefield effect in the context of Popsicle existing. Beast doesn't have a great enter the battlefield effect, or it doesn't have any. But it's also a 5 cost inkable that is a must answer.
So Medusa does it very well, but other than that, it's very difficult to just trade down on a beast. And so then your opponent sometimes just has to damage it, and then you have on your turn a 7th strength character, where the opponent had to already invest resources. So, okay, the beast cannot really easily be 2-for-1. With the Tamatoa, yes, it can be 2-for-1, but it already replenished your cards. So, if you might still lose a lot of tempo playing Tamatoa, but it's not as bad. Plus, Tamatoa is inkable, so you can only play into it when you want to. And then Mufasa, if it does stick, it probably does more than if Tamatoa sticks, right? That you got some cards back, okay, that's whatever. But if it sticks, you might actually get to use them. You get to use your ink twice. It quests for 4. If it sticks, it is better than Tamatoa in a vacuum. But Tamatoa is already very good when it sticks, so you're already kind of happy when it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, or if either of those cards doesn't stick, you'd much rather have played the Tamatoa, which already gave you a card. And on top of that, Tamatoa is quite flexible because it's inkable.
Mufasa's gonna take up that 8 cost slot as well. So it's like, if you think about a lot of Sapphire decks, Tamatoa is actually like a huge part of the win condition of a lot of these Sapphire decks. Is you ramp, you control the board a little bit, and then you get to your Tamatoa, you do your diamond, you can win the game. So I guess
I think you could say that Mufasa is a win condition, but Tamatoa is also just it's obviously it's not a 1-card engine, but it is kind of a 1-card engine because you already have the Popsicles in your deck because they're for the hero package, and you can just loop that shit with one Tamatoa.
That's what I'm saying. Like Mufasa has to be doing something like that is just better than Tamatoa for the similar cost of Tamatoa, whereas Mufasa is a much higher cost than just playing Tamatoa,
I just think that Tamatoa's enter the battlefield effect is very good. Like, I don't think they said here, they're like, it doesn't have much of an effect. I think it has a great effect. Like, instantly recur the item, so instantly replace it as a card. And then that item also happens to be a 1-cost draw card, which turns into a quest draw 2 cards. Or as Tamatoa, it's just. Or
sometimes you just take, like, I don't know, destroyed quill to hand and ink that quill or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but all that being said, I don't think Mufasa is an awful card. It's still like kind of close to being good enough, but just not quite there.
That's why we're hesitant on the card.
Yeah. Next comment from Rye Tackle. What is the biggest indicator to you that a card is good, or is it contextual to its ink color or deck that it's in? I think we've talked about this a lot. This kind of revolves around fundamentals for the most part. In general, if you play... Okay, let's just give like a very basic example, right? In general, if you play a card and it in some way replaces itself, I think that's a general consideration to be a good card for the most part, right?
I think if you were going to like try to get a broad stroke of what is and is not good, you would have to evaluate the vanilla stat lines and vanilla effect. Well, vanilla would be no effect on
Mhm.
every card at every single CMC or ink, and then it's like what percent are you above or below that vanilla? By what order of magnitude are you above that? So if it's like your vanilla your vanilla 3 cost is like a 2/2 or something by default, or a 3/3, but then you have a vanilla, or then you have a 3 cost that comes into the field is a 2/2 and it replaces itself. It's like, okay, what quantitative value do I give to that card? I add it all up. It's like, okay, it's X% over the, whatever the standard 3 cost would be.
I think that's close, but I don't actually care about the vanilla stat line. I care about like the average card that sees meta relevant play. Like you kind of have to compare it to that, because there's a lot of cards that are better than the vanilla stat line that are still bad, or not that are still not good enough to see meta relevant play. So I would just compare it to what are other decks doing for the same ink cost. What good cards are there in the game for this ink cost? How does my card compare to that? But then if you figure out, okay, how does it compare to that? I think the next step is then how often is that card actually as good as it can be? Because the card has a ceiling, and like how there's the best case scenario where it's very good, but you also have to look at, okay, how often does this come up where it's very good? How often do other scenarios come up where it's okay? How often do the scenarios come up where it's like an awful card to play and I would much rather do anything else? And if you factor that in too, that's really how you can get like a basic understanding of how good a card could be.
Yeah, because there is like I actually remember looking it up close to when like Lorcana came out. There is like a balance formula basically for cards. There probably is in like most card games. You know, it's
Every
like
card game.
for each cost there should be this amount of stats, and then there's things saying if there's X amount of keywords, then either stats are reduced or cost is increased, or it's inkable, it's not inkable. That like there's like in terms of like basic balancing stuff, that's always going to exist. I'm pretty sure if you guys look up like Lorcana balancing thing, there's people who've done like articles on it and like kind of done out the formulas. But I do kind of agree with Moyen. I don't think that's the full picture. If you look at those raw formulas, that probably has a great influence. Maybe not even so. Maybe it just helps you get a bit more of an understanding for how general balancing works in the game when it comes to stats and stuff. Like that's the very basics. But when you get to like the more complex designs, it's harder to kind of apply that theory and see like, oh, how much do I measure? Does this effect incur a cost of like an ink and a half or 2 ink, right? Like those are the things that get a little bit more complex.
It's funny because Flesh and Blood is like see, everything is so balanced that if you're like a single quantitative point over the vanilla stat line for the cost
It's
of a
just
card,
insane.
it's like fucking insane. I mean, it's part of the reason why that game is kind of boring. It's like it just is math the other day, and if you're like 1 point ahead, it's like actually crazy. Because no cards do that. They're all balanced into like the same quantitative like value, like a true value, and it makes the game super balanced in theory. But yeah, you have a lot less interesting.
That's quite interesting, yeah. So like
decisions.
I can see, yeah, sure, I can see it as being like making a game super balanced, but I can also kind of again, I haven't played the game, but I can also understand how that can be maybe slightly stale, perhaps, or slightly boring, right?
Yeah, I mean they've gotten past that with design, but I mean it still is the most powerful thing you can do in Flesh and Blood is just be one quantitative value over your opponent at any given time. It's like it's just an absolutely disgusting and insane thing to do. Like we had a player win the world championships by basically doing that, and he took a vanilla card and put it in like a wizard deck, which was like the most synergistic deck possible, and just having that vanilla card just gave him that 1 point recursive over the opponent, and it was super unfair. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult problem in game design that you want your game balanced, but only to a certain extent. As I think more than you want your game to be balanced, I think you want it to be fun.
Yep.
And then I think to a certain degree, you need imbalance to create fun experience. And I think I've often seen in digital card games that there was like an imbalance, and people complained about it, and something was broken and strong. And then a few patches later, all the broken stuff was nerfed, and then the game just was kind of boring but balanced.
Yeah,
So
for
it's a
sure.
very difficult thing to do.
Definitely,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think that's stuff that people overlook a lot of time. Like you said, Moyen, like they'll just straight away go to, holy shit, this is broken, this is insane, and just like blame the designers for doing such a bad job. You know, game design
Yeah.
is fucking hard, I think it's a lot harder than people. I think there's a lot of people that think, oh, I could design a card so much better than this. I'm like, could you? Could you really? I'd love to see some people. So it's so funny. Like I see like custom cards all the time on like Twitter and stuff. I actually remember this. I remember like it's probably around like set 2 of Lorcana. I remember looking at some person's like Lorcana card designs. And I encourage people to be creative and stuff like that. But I had this impulse that like I saw like it was about 5 cards this person posted. I had this impulse to just say these are fucking awful, like to reply, but I'm like I don't want to be a dickhead. I don't want to be like this toxic piece of shit that just out of nowhere shits on someone's design, right? But like it is on like the crux of it is it's fucking difficult to do it. It really, really is. I don't think I could do it, and if I could do it, I think there'd have to be a lot of like math and a lot of understanding, a lot of time I'd have to invest to really understand what goes into becoming a very good game designer, because it is not easy. The next comment is from Hater. It says, I think the existence of sing mechanic is mostly the reason for the play draw disparity. So
well, yeah, it contributes to it, but that's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say it definitely contributes to it from the perspective of, oh, if I get this card out before my opponent, I can sing with this card before my opponent can do something, like, you know. But it's not. Yeah, it's not the whole thing.
I think a lot of it is rooted in bad removal. Like I think Lorcana has intentionally overcosted and inefficient removal.
Oh my god, I think Tarek said that like 5 times this weekend.
Yeah, because our removal is awful.
Yeah, because that's just how it is. Like,
yeah.
If you've played Magic, which Tarek has played a lot of Magic, you'll realize that like the threats in Lorcana are way better than the removal. Like anybody who complains that like, oh, Be Prepared is stupid. Like Be Prepared is a inefficient card compared to its counterpart in a game like Magic.
Wrath, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Wrath is a little broken because it's 4 cost, but like the modern versions of that, it's like our removal is very, very bad, like extremely bad, to be honest. So because of that, like you get into those scenarios where someone puts down a beast, they're on the play, they put down the beast, and it's like, oh, I can't answer this for 2 turns with my Medusa. It's like really bad.
Yep.
You're like, okay, I just lose the game. Yeah, like our removal doesn't tend to like frequently trade up.
That's so funny. Just in general, when I mentioned like Wrath and stuff, the entire time I was testing with Tarek, he just kept calling things Magic. I was like, Magic card names. I was like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. He was like, oh, you've got the Mind Rot in your hand. You've got Thoughtseize, don't you? I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? What are these cards, bro? Well, yeah, I find that funny. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people that have previously played Magic, but it makes sense, right? I mean, I think one of the most direct comparisons, which is hilarious. Have you guys seen I don't know the name of the Magic card, but it's like the comparison between Scuttle and a Magic card, which is also like a bird. It's blue. It's the same cost. It's the same stats. It literally has the exact same effect.
And it impulses for an item. Really?
Yeah, for an artifact. Yeah.
I mean, to give you an idea, like for the card that Din had in his deck.
Mm-hmm. Dig a little deeper. Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, that's dig through time.
Yep.
That, like literally,
they literally could have named. They couldn't have named that any similar.
No, they do it. No, they do it on purpose because it pays homage and people love that. Mm-hmm. But when he said like, "Oh, you have the Mind Rot," Mind Rot is literally that effect. Like, Lorcana, people use this Magic terminology. And they stretch it a bit, like you'll hear them, use it in like everyday life. And sometimes you're like, wow, I'm hanging out with these guys. I have no idea what they're talking about at any given time. But in Lorcana, a lot of these cards are literally exact clones of cards in Magic, which is not like a lazy thing. It's like it pays homage.
Homage,
like people. Yeah, I think it's cool. I like it because it's a different game system. So the cards are effectively they have different impacts.
Yeah, but sorry. Coming back to the question, I think Moyen, you're going to say something there.
I agree. I think the singing mechanic slightly amplifies the problem, but the problem, if singing didn't exist, that would still be a significant advantage. And
you think it's removal mainly?
No, I think it's. I think the problem would exist to a lesser extent if you had better removal. I don't think good removal would just delete the issue.
It wouldn't delete it. So the idea behind efficient removal is that if you have more efficient removal, and because you would still be trading effectively, on some of this removal, would be trading 1 for 1, but you would get more sort of ink positive trades, and then in the long run, the card like matters more in that scenario.
Yeah.
You know, so that you would get on the draw
Yeah,
to get
so
the extra card.
if we didn't live in a world where our 5-cost AoE doesn't banish the 1-cost 1/3s because it just deals 2 damage and not 3.
Yeah, like our equivalent of, I think would be like I think the card's called like murder in in Magic. Is like, you know, just kind of destroy target creature is a 5-cost uninkable, which that card doesn't really see play anymore. Don't get me wrong, Dragonfire, but it's pretty rough. And we have like nothing close to like something like a Swords to Plowshares, which I would love to have, or we don't have anything close to like a Lightning Bolt, which I would love to have. So we'll see. It's intentional so that people actually have to play creatures and like play the game, I think.
Yes, I think you. I think the experience, if removal gets too good, can sometimes be that it's better not to play cards than to play cards, and that's an experience that only a specific group of players would really enjoy. And I don't think that's really what they are going for. Yeah, I actually think so. They can print some cards that are better going second, but it's actually very specific things that are only good going second and not or like are better going second than they're going first. So much that you would actually prefer to go second. Stuff like the hey that gives an ink if your opponent has more ink. If they'd have to print a lot of cards in that direction.
Is that like just like a? But that hey is kind of like a catch-up card, no?
Yeah, I mean it still generates value if you're behind and maybe so much above weight that it can catch you up a little bit. I'm just saying cards in that direction could maybe damper the issue. Is that a word? For a bit, but I think as long as the core rules don't change, which I don't expect them to, going first will be better for a long, long time.
Yeah, which is okay. I remember there was a Flesh and Blood player and someone
bro,
who we actually
don't
tested
tell
with.
me.
I know.
Bro, you've been bullying this poor kid for the last 2 weeks on every podcast you appear on.
He tells you he's a kid. He's not. He's a grown ass man. But he wrote a tweet just complaining about the first player advantage.
Poor Michael.
In Lorcana.
Oh my god.
Yeah, complaining about the first player advantage in Lorcana after like a week of playing it. And it's like, yeah, it exists, but it doesn't negate like the entire game design. It's actually there for, you know, part of it is purposeful. Like you want some aspect of variance that exists outside of like you know, things that players have control over. It just gives you more of a like more equity to win as the worst player, which I know there's going to be competitive players like, why the fuck would we ever want the worst player to win? It's extremely important that that is possible and that happens. And Lorcana is a game where even with first player advantage, that happens very infrequently because you don't have this land system like you do in Magic. The mulligan is insanely powerful, so you can like mulligan for very specific cards. Like, so it's already pretty rough in Lorcana. So I actually, while I dislike the first player advantage, I think that it serves an important purpose.
I think one of the few decks that it like, I mean, going first helps in every deck, right? But when we're talking about, you know, allowing some players to win that may not be a little bit like great at the game is, I saw it this weekend, which is completely fair. I saw like a lot of people just playing hyper aggro, right? If you play hyper aggro and you go first, like there's a very high chance that you win, most likely, because you're going to start questing earlier. But then equally, like you said, Brennan, then if there is a good player on the other end and they, I mean, they can see that they're facing hyper aggro. I mean, it's interesting actually, because it's always the whole thing about if it's a blind mulligan versus hyper aggro, it's like it can actually you a blind mulligan versus hyper aggro and they're going first, you could just lose the game. You could lose the game because you're not expecting for that deck to go so fast, and in a meta where hyper aggro isn't so prevalent, like that's a valid reason why, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of players would probably, once they see hyper aggro, they'd be like, oh, okay, this is like a free 2-0 most of the time, because you think most decks could be able to handle it. But sometimes, like, if you're not ready for how fast the deck can go, you know, mulligan accordingly, like, you just get blown out of the water. But it probably feels bad in a competitive event where you're like, oh shit, I just got like, you know, I went 1-1 against hyper aggro, I should have absolutely destroyed them. But that's part of the game, if that makes sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also shout out to Zero Mufasas and Zero Hyper Aggros making top cut in Toronto.
Deserved. It didn't make top cut? No? Did it?
At least in this. No, it didn't.
It didn't? Okay. I thought
shout out to that.
I thought a Ruby Amber did, but no, I guess not. All right, our last comment from Spilled Ink was actually one from Discord. So we do occasionally check the Discord as well for some Spilled Ink questions. If they're particularly interesting, we'll definitely read them out. So, Moyen, do you mind taking this one? Because this one's targeted for you and Brendan.
At Moyen and at Brandon, could you please answer here or cover in a future episode this topic? I'm trying desperately to level up my game. I have a core group of 4 to 6 people that are highly competitive and very good players. And I'm trying to figure out what data we should be collecting when playing against each other and how to really try and maximize our time when testing. Could you provide any suggestions or experience based on what you all do or have done in the past? I mean, obviously wins, losses, and matchup spread and play versus draw, but is there other very relevant data I'm not considering? Such as something like how good was my opening hand, but I'm not sure how to quantify that, or how many cards did I have to alter? This is Mark from Discord.
Yeah, I guess you can start by answering. You can read and answer the question.
Oh, now I used my brain cells on reading it out. Well, I think the main thing I think first of all, you are 10 steps ahead of your competition because most people test without putting a lot of thought into how to efficiently test, and they just like mind-numbingly jam games. So you already thinking about this is, I think, a very, very good sign that you're headed in the right direction. And then I think the main thing that we talked about in the past on what leveled up our preparation efficiency, if you can say that, is that we don't just play games and then monitor the random games that we ended up playing. We also look for certain. We basically manipulate our starting hands and maybe also a few of the first draws to see how the game plays out if we would have ended up getting certain hands in certain matchups against certain hands, and then to see in what positions you end up getting on, like, let's say turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and then that's something you can really evaluate, and then based on that figure out how aggressively do you need to be mulliganing for a certain hand in a certain matchup, because then you know, okay, how good or bad is the spot that I end up getting to a little bit later down the road.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think that's something that helped me a lot in my prep as well, was starting off with certain hands to see, okay, if I start with this Diablo opener, obviously I know it's powerful, but against the correct answer, how does it help me? How do I kind of play around these things? I did things even like, you know, okay, if I keep like Prince John and You Forgot Me, right? Like that's a turn 3, turn 4 play. How important is it for me to I ultimately, you know, I figure, okay, having a John in my opening hand is actually very valuable, but do I really need that? You know, You've Forgotten Me, maybe not against every matchup, but against certain matchups might be really good. So that's what I did a lot in my personal testing was, you know, I kept certain cards and I kind of then evaluated how I felt, how important it was for the matchup. And yeah, I do think that's something that players will just try and do through playing games, like, oh my god, like, but they won't really be able to focus on that as the winning outcome. Maybe they'll just kind of play their game and say, oh, I was just favoring the matchup or things went right or whatever. Like, it's being able to narrow down kind of what were the pivot points in the game where you really kind of took over the game, or when you were even starting to lose the game, right? I think that's points where you can really help up your level.
I mean, I just agree with that stuff. I feel like we've talked about it ad nauseum too, in regards to like our testing process and where we differentiate from maybe some of the previous testing strategies that other groups have had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, with that, we're going to head out into the main topic, which is just the Set 5 metagame in general. So I know Moyen was on vacation, but you've probably, I'm assuming you've been testing in your free time or just been looking at stuff. Before we jump into any of your updated deck lists, there are some decks I want to jump on really quickly. There were obviously the side events from the challenge this weekend. They had 2 of them. I think they were probably about 150 players each, so that's still a relatively large amount of players. So we can kind of have a look at the deck lists and see what people were brewing and stuff like that. So I'm going to go through a few different decks from different people here, some ink color combinations. I do want to start, I don't have a deck list here, but I was talking to Tarek, and after playing Ruby Amethyst this weekend, is trying to like level up that deck a little bit. and was really talking to me about the Madam Mim Elephant and the Teeth and Ambitions combo. And I think I started off by telling him, I was like, oh yeah, Teeth and Ambitions. I think Brennan absolutely hates that card. He started laughing at me. But I know.
Wait,
I think
who is this? Who is this with the teeth?
Tarek.
Yeah. He was that was cooked. That was cooked.
Yeah, so it is interesting.
Why, he's the one who's saying removal's bad. Why can't he do the simple math on why teeth is just a
fundamentally a bad card? Sure, yeah. I think
Yeah,
he's
but if
trying
you
to
can turn the self damage into an upside with the elephant, then maybe it's not a bad card.
Yeah, so he's looking at it like a zero cost for damage, but I was like, it is sure whatever, but like it's the cost of having these cards in your deck, and then also it's actually not. It's like it's the 2 damage, and then the card has to survive until the next turn, and then you get another 2 damage. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I kind of think bro's probably cooking a little bit too, but you know, I guess we'll see. I just looked at Madam Mim Elephant in general. We talked about this as well. I still don't know how well it fits into the general Ruby Amethyst deck right now, and it's kind of game plan. I think that right now the deck still wants to be doing Flynn Sisu for the most part. I haven't really seen too many other innovations there, and I don't know, like there's no denying that, you know, if you play this Mim Elephant, yeah, sure, you're playing a 3/7, which is huge, and if you can activate this card's effect and get it rolling, it's probably pretty beneficial. But like I think it is important to try and, you know, think about, okay, if this is coming down on turn 4, then what are we kind of bouncing? What are we doing? Oh, sure. I think Tarek's reasoning was like, oh, we run 12 1-drops in the deck. It's fine. We just bounce a 1-drop or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. So what are your thoughts on Elephant in general? I think we did cover the card when people asked for our kind of initial set 5 impressions, but is there any other room to breed, do you think, for Elephant specifically in Ruby Amethyst now?
So I think the problem with, okay, I just bounce a 1-drop is, what did you do turn 1, turn 2, 3?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, you want to play a 1-drop turn 1, and then to really still have that 1-drop on the board, it means, okay, if it's a follower or boom, you never wanted to cycle it. If and you need to play something on 2 and 3 that's not a bounce card already. So if your curve made you want to play Snake on 2 or Fox on 3, or a third option, Crab on 3 and take a trade with your 1-drop, then you still have a good bounce target from turn 1 leading up into the turn 4. But I think a lot of the time, some of these conditions will not be met, so that you don't have a good bounce target on the board turn 4.
So my issue with this card is I think that the more expensive a bounce card gets,
oh yeah, you talked about this last week, right?
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, you did mention this.
Okay,
yeah.
I forgot who had the combo with. I was like, okay, did I have this combo with Tarek, or did I talk about this in pod? But yeah, the more expensive the bounce card is, the worse. It's just antithetical to the reason it's in your deck, because not only is it there to, you know, contest the board early and have an overstated body, but it's also there fundamentally for your draw package, which is the Madam Mim Merlin Rabbit. Sorry. So yeah, also, when when the card comes down, I still think it has to do something powerful. So like, it's the reason why Fox is so good. Fox is a 3 cost, you bounce it, but like it can instantly take out something, which is really powerful. Like this is just a big body, but it's still not doing anything realistic. Specifically talking in RA as well.
Yeah.
So I think I would never play it in RA, but I could be wrong. Your 4-cost slot is also very contested. You got Goat, Rabbit, Queen's Castle.
Yep.
No way I'm playing.
That's the next thing. Okay, so now we have the Elsa, which you could maybe do turn 5, and the Maui, but a lot of the time, turn 5, you just want to bounce your Rabbit plus do something else. If you play Mim on 4, you don't have a Rabbit to bounce, so you actually have to do something for 5 ink, like Maui or the Elsa, and so that narrows down your turn 5 as well, so it would make the deck less consistent in a bunch of ways.
Yeah, sure. So going into the side event stuff, this is taken from, I think, multiple different side events. There was a 9 a.m. one and an 8 a.m. one. The first place deck for the 8 a.m. side event was won by a 13-year-old, which is pretty sick. I think I saw him around the top tables of that side event the entire time. So it's I think it's always cool to see someone so young do so well. But played Blurple as well, which is a color combination I think did get quite better moving into set 5. So this deck includes cards like Cheapo, Mickey. It has, I think the most notable thing for maybe not Blurple in particular, but I think I really underestimated this the 5-cost Elsa with evasive to then be able to shift into the big Elsa. Any card that has evasive, I think, is pretty strong to then have a shift target into, because it's, I mean, evasive cards just should be a little bit more difficult to interact with, and I just think the Elsa card was actually maybe a little bit better than we initially reviewed it. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Blurple in general? Like, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, Brendan, but I think
honestly just haven't played it. It won a pretty big event here, so I can't really deny it.
Can deny it.
No, bro, you can't deny it. Though it is a big event. This is a big.
How big
event.
was the event?
190.
I can check. 8 AM one was 170.
170 players.
Don't say one. No. I thought he was about to say 170 NA gamers. Do not, do not say that.
170
players. Yeah.
that didn't make top cut and are like burned out and playing some fun decks in the set 5 format that no one understands yet.
Oh, that didn't make my guy's roasting these
bro.
people.
The second place is Ed, who won.
Yeah,
Dallas.
the second place is Ed, bro. Yeah.
Okay, I don't care.
The top 16 is Sailor.
Okay. There was some okay players. I'm just trying to point out that this was extremely early in the format. Yeah. Some of the good players were filtered out, and it was a side event format in like where there was no established meta yet. If you look through the top 16 decks, you will find a million things that are nowhere close to optimized.
Nobody's putting Blurple Believer on their tombstone, but I mean, you can't deny that this is like.
I think some people do.
This is some proof of concept that the deck is functional. It does. I will say that when I do see the number of copies of cards in this deck, I do die a little bit inside because it is mostly 2-0s. But this is proof of concept that the deck is functional in set 5. The deck was not fucking functional before this. It was terrible.
Okay, so.
God, this 13. Okay, confirm this podcast. Moyen literally made a 13-year-old cry right now if he watches our podcast.
No.
He's not talking about the pilot. He's talking about the color combination.
Yeah, I'm nothing against the guy.
There's a big Blurple Believer on Twitter, by the way. I don't even follow them, but they show up in my my For You page, and all I see is fucking Blurple tweets. It's been like 6 months. It's been so long.
I still don't believe in Blurple, but I might be wrong. If you guys now believe in Blurple, can you point out what improved the deck so much that it's now viable when it wasn't before? Because it does play some new cards, but I don't see anything that now tells me, oh, this is so much better than it used to be.
I think that in general, Blurple is now kind of just evolved. I think what Blurple always was/is right now is more of a tempo/mid-range deck than anyone trying to believe that it's a control deck, because it just does not carry the removal in it to be a control deck. I think people think, ramp and draw. Sure, ramp and draw sounds amazing, but if there's no removal in the deck, then that's just not going to work. I think
all of Blurple's removal is
inefficient.
I think you could call it. Right? I think you could call it a tempo card, like Yzma. Technically removal, but that's tempo, right? Because
so it's let it go.
I think the removal is through like the removal is through like bodies and stuff. So I think Elsa is like a perfect example in terms of like you establish a board and your removal is like basically like tapping your opponent's stuff or rushing your opponent's stuff in general. So like. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what Blurple probably always was and maybe always will be. Oh, myself and Brennan talked about this. Imagine like the fundamentals, right? The card draw from Amethyst, the ramp from Blue, and then if you added like really like, I mean, we already said that the removal in this game isn't efficient, but if you added like even equal removal that what's in the game right now, like Blurple would probably be quite good. But then you can argue like that's already just like Ruby Sapphire, because Ruby Sapphire has still pretty good draw engines through Popsicles and Hiram, and then it has the removal in Ruby. So
I think okay, so because no one answered my question, I will just answer it myself. I think looking at this Tipo is probably the biggest change, as before maybe you were playing one jump, but like you can now Tipo curve into so many things. You can have a body onto the board, which, okay, so now you have a card list in hand, a body more on board, but I think for a a tempo deck as we are outlining,
Mhm.
I think that might make a big difference. It means you can play the elephant on 3, which could actually be okay in this deck, and curve into rabbit and goat. But also you have this cheap body on the board that you can use for crab later. So I think Tipo is probably a big difference. 2 goats is something that is quite wild to me, for example.
It's day one of like a new set.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
two
what I
hours-
was saying, and you guys were dunking on me just because I said it's
No,
day
no.
one.
I'm just trying to say it's not like there's something. There's an essence of something. It's like a fart in the wind. Yeah, Blurple
A fart
exists.
in the wind.
yeah.
Set 4 Blurple was pure. Set 4 previous Blurple, pure copium. This
Set-
might be a little bit more than copium.
Set 4 Blurple was also a fart in the wind.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's finally not. Well, maybe it still is a fart in the
Maybe
wind.
it's
but
two farts in the wind. I don't know.
Yeah, it's getting there. Like it's getting there. I would say you can unironically consider it as a possible deck to try out.
Yeah,
in
sure.
set five.
I will admit I haven't tried this a lot yet. It's, I guess, just conceptually I didn't see the need to. But I think I should try it a bit more, and maybe it's okay.
Yeah, and then you can come to your evaluation that you were right all along, and let's just move on.
So, guys, be ready for next week's episode.
Okay, the next deck I have here is from Ed. He came second place in this event. It's a green steel list. What are your thoughts on this overall? I think Ed was actually telling me about this list in general. Was telling me kind of the core concepts of it. I remember I told him a meme when he was telling me about this deck. So he has the 4 Mother Gothel in this deck, and there's like the meme from The Office where it's Pam and it's like these 2 pictures of this. It's the same picture, whatever. So it's like Lady Tremaine and Mother Gothel, because like they do very very similar effects. They're both 6 cost. They basically like force your opponent to choose something to remove, even though Mother Gothel makes it bounce back to the opponent's hand. But Mother Gothel is just way better statted. Sure, it doesn't banish a card, it bounces it back to their hand. But yeah.
I despise that meme. It's the most overused meme in the entire world.
Oh my god, Moyen's on a rampage today. Oh my god.
No, but I've seen that meme a million times when playing card games. Every time 2 cards are similar, I see that meme. It's annoying.
Moyen hates happiness.
Yeah.
No, I'm very happy.
I'm pro happiness actually. I don't know. Green steel. Not a list I'm gonna have a lot of opinions on right out of the gate. to be
Okay,
honest.
but I think it looks very powerful, and it's just green steel before was just running out of cards, but making you run out of cards at the same time. Now you won't run out of cards because the buggy's gone. They run out of cards, but they win the board with the tempo tools, and then they can recover with a Clarabelle.
Clarabelle, yeah.
Yeah, I think. So you know how people say when card decks have a lot of like 2-offs, 3-offs, 1-offs, and they're like, oh no, it cannot be refined. I don't think the deck will end up being a deck where there's every single card is a 4-off. But still, I think.
Okay.
core
I
of
think
the
that's
deck
very
was
fair,
fine.
but I do remember as well, for set 4, when Emerald Steel came out, I was like, oh, Moyen, like what Moyen gave me an Emerald Steel deck with 4-ofs of everything. So I think it's not a bad choice to do 4-ofs of everything at the start when testing a deck, and then you can change stuff over time. Yeah.
I think it makes sense for the first event and for like testing the core idea of the deck. I think later on, as things get more refined, that will no longer be the case. But I think the core concept of the deck seems powerful, strong, somewhat consistent. I can see this do well.
I played against Pete a little bit during one of the side events on Sunday, and I was like, I don't know, I was kind of surprised by the card. It's like in a certain situation, Pete can actually be like game winning, which is kind of insane to me. Like I don't know, I still think people maybe rated it like a little bit too high, but I think for me, I really needed to play. I haven't even played against it enough, right? But I need to play against it more to really evaluate like, okay, how impactful is this card actually going to be? Because like it really does need to be played at an optimal time. It's like, if you can play it when it's like, okay, if my opponent has this exact thing in their hand and I'm very confident that they have it, or even if I've played a card where I literally know what's in their hand, that Pete can be like very, very efficient to force your opponent to just like play cards they wouldn't really want to play, but they have to because there's no other choice, you know?
Yeah, there's also, and there's some things, I guess, you could try to build this with the Diablo package. You
Mhm.
could. We're already playing for Stormage and for Strength of Raging Fire. The Ursula Deceiver of All could also have a lot of potential. I think in this color combination, there's a lot of tools you have available.
The next list I want to talk about is Red Blue, so Ruby Sapphire, and I think this is a very interesting one moving into set 5. I saw a few people showing off their ideas to me at the event over the weekend, and I liked a lot of what was there. I saw a lot of people running Tipo, which I think Tipo is quite good. Running Tipo and 4 1 jump, I think if you're running Tipo, maybe you could cut down to 3 1 jump potentially.
Why? Why exactly?
Oh, I can answer.
Nope.
Oh.
I think it's a bold statement. So, like, why? What?
Well,
what?
clearly,
that,
Moyen
it
knows
sounds
the
very,
answer. So why?
No, it sounds
very.
very specific. Why exactly?
I heard some people that are smarter than me say it. I'll admit. So I don't know why.
I can try to answer. Basically, if you have X amount of ramp on 2 in your deck, the chance of you finding ramp on 2,
that
how
was
do I
it.
say
That
this?
was the reasoning.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember now.
Of
Yeah, so,
course,
like,
it's
what-
related to a hypergeometric calculation to find a ramp card on 2. I'm just wondering if you know the math because you were making the statement.
No, I'm dumb. That's the.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so basically for every consecutive ramp on 2 card you add to your deck, the chance increases a little bit less than for the last one you added. So
Yeah.
maybe for just an example that should be close to accurate. Let's say you play 6 cards that ramp you on 2, maybe you have like around 80%, and then you add 1 card and it increases by 4% to have ramp on 2. Then you add another one and maybe it only increases for another 3% to have ramp on 2. And yeah, that's basically the main reason. So you can say like, okay, so the cost of putting this into my deck, it's still a pretty bad card later on in the game. Is still the same, but the benefit actually gets lower with each card you add. So there's an argument to be had if the uninkable count is too much of an issue, that maybe you don't play 4 1 jump, maybe you play like 4 Tipo and 2 1 jump, something like that.
What do you guys think of this card? Vision of the future. 2 cost, action. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put 1 in your hand, the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order.
All I'll say is people, again, way smarter than me, were having such heated debates about this card. Where I was like, it's interesting listening to them, but I'm like, this was the whole thing about the weekend. People kept coming to me, oh, Kawa, love the podcast stuff. I'm like, there are so many people in this game that are way more insanely smart than me at card games. And I love it. I love the fact that's the case, because I'm so glad I'm not like the definition of what people consider is good. People think I'm good at card games. My God, look at this person who's literally beside me on the screen right now. He's infinitely smarter than me. Moyen, tell us your opinion on this card.
I think vision is actually kind of hard to evaluate. I've seen a lot
so is develop your brain, right? Like we've been like fucking pontificating that card for a long time.
At least with the card pool we've had in the recent sets, I think Develop Your Brain was just a very good card. But now the slots are getting kind of it's getting harder to fit cards like Develop Your Brain in, because there's more stuff that we need to be playing and more good cards that we want to be playing. But Vision of the Future, I've seen people be very high on, and I think it's a card that probably improves the deck. I don't think it's a card I want to put 4 copies of in my deck, as it's a lot less flexible than Develop Your Brain, but the upside of it later in the game is a lot higher, because it is significantly more likely it finds you what you are looking for in any given situation. But it's not a card you can fit in turn 1. It's not a card you can fit in on the quill turn to maybe help you dig something. And then I think if you play 4 Vision of the Future, yes, you can always say, okay, if it doesn't fit my curve right now, I can just ink it. But if you play a lot of these cards that you just want to be inking until a kind of late stage in the game, I think that can also become quite clunky. So I think I would expect red-blue decks to maybe play more like 2 vision, maybe 3 vision, not necessarily a 4.
So I can't remember the name of the other player, but I know Zan was discussing this card with another player at the challenge that I was sat beside at the time, and I want to just highlight some of the stuff that they were talking about because I'd be interested to hear your guys' opinions on it as well. So the other player was talking about Visions of the Future for twice the cost of one jump ahead. You get to see more than double than what not one jump. Oh my god, develop your brain.
It's equal to more than 2 develop your brains.
Yeah, so that was one point that he highlighted was a good thing, and then Zan was just talking about the fact that like sure, yeah, you get to look at 5 cards, you can pick one, and you get to choose the rest. You've got more options, but then if there's I don't know, let's say like it's a little bit later in the game, there's a card in there that you've just put at the bottom of your deck, and it's like maybe that doesn't feel great. But then the counter argument from the other player was like, sure, but that card could have always that card could have always been.
Fuck was that?
That card could have always been at the bottom of the deck, and then
Stan said that.
I don't want to say what people said. I'm trying to remember.
Who said that?
Bro,
no, someone's gonna
bro,
get mad
I
at
was
me,
also
bro.
gonna say.
This is the conversation. Basically,
those are some fighting words right there.
This is the conversation that was being had. I'm just saying ideas, okay? I'm just
Kawa
saying.
like overhears something like in the stall next to him. He's like, I quote Zan Saeed exactly. He said this cooked ass shit.
Bro, oh my god. I ain't coming to Seattle, boys. I'll stay in you. I'm okay, boys.
Yeah, that one was. You definitely threw us for a loop with that one. With the put the card.
Basically, what I'm saying is right, bottom of the deck, whatever. But I think because they're saying there's fought. So like Brendan, you talked about. I remember when I was playing you and testing at one stage, you were like, "Oh, does saw me develop my brains? Does it get to the stage where like?" If you remember like the cards that you put down, like you'll remember like I think you gave this example in like Flesh and Blood where like there was so many of these effects that you
it happened to me
effectively
in this game.
Yeah, like you remembered
all
the
my
order,
win
right?
conditions were at the bottom.
Yeah, but no, but like if you get to the stage because you're looking through 5, is there a chance in certain games you get to a stage where you literally get to that part of the deck again when you just know the rest of your entire deck again? You know,
Bro, that sounds like an upside.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying. I'm just talking about.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
card,
okay,
you know,
for sure. Yeah, if you're
very-
opting 5 cards, then yeah, why not?
Yeah. It happened sometimes very, very rarely, even before when you're playing 4 Develop Your Brain, 4 Grammatala, that you would at least like have like 7 cards left in the deck and you know the bottom 5 and you're like, okay, these 2 must be these 2 cards, but or often it could have been more than 2 cards because maybe you Mickey'd, I don't know. But or you 1 jumped the card away.
Oh, Mickey and 1 jump. Are we gonna get into this conversation again?
No. Okay, so I mean I guess the base I think all of our listeners should already understand because we've talked about this a billion times, but putting cards to the bottom of your deck, it's not a downside. If someone like stole half of your deck and you only would have gone through half your deck anyways, it doesn't make a difference to the chance of what cards you are going to draw. And technically you seeing cards that you know you are not going to draw for the next X turns and your opponent doesn't know that can be leveraged to a very, very slight advantage. But I think the much more interesting conversation to be had is, okay, develop your brain, look at 1 ink, look at 2, vision of the future, 2 ink, look at 5. And I think we talked about this at some point, but maybe it was in a video we didn't upload, where I definitely said, but I don't know if this was in a podcast, that yes, it does more than double, but it needs to do more than double because paying 2 ink. Okay, this isn't very intuitive, but paying 2 ink is more than double the cost than paying 1 ink.
More than double, yeah.
No, I remember you saying something like that before. Yeah, I don't know if it was on the pod, but yeah.
Because paying 2 ink is much, much harder to fit into a turn than having a spare ink somewhere, especially in a deck that doesn't really have lots of important plays turn 1, that plays Quill on turn 3, can fit and develop your brain there. So the opportunity cost of playing a 2 ink card is like more than double than the opportunity cost of playing a 1 ink card, specifically in red-blue. So it also needs to be doing more than double than what the developer brain is doing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean Vision of the Future is necessarily bad. It's just that argument alone is not enough to say, oh, that's why I can definitely say Vision must be better than Develop Your Brain.
Tempo loss with Develop Your Brain. And I think that a lot of people didn't even really consider that, you know? But I was already kind of worried about some of the tempo losses of, spending that 1 ink for Develop Your Brain. So yeah,
I
don't know.
remember
It's a card
like,
I'm definitely gonna test. But
basically a lot of people's opinion when they talked about this weekend was it's a very difficult card to evaluate, is what a lot of people basically.
And it is.
Yeah. The one thing about this particular list that we're not looking at that I would actually maybe like to see is some Gastons in here, the 4-2, because Daisy Duck is an absolute menace running around right now. So I think Gaston's actually quite an efficient answer to the card. Don't know how you guys feel.
I think Gaston's good, and especially because we're playing ice blocks already. That was usually what Gaston needed to be a good card, so it doesn't just get forced into bad trades because ice block can bail you out of those. The problem is I'm not really sure it answers. So I think it's pretty good against Ruby Amethyst because of Flynn and Sisu. I'm not sure it's a good answer against Daisy Duck because Daisy Duck's played either in hyper aggro decks that play Befuddle if you try to answer it with a Gaston instead of the other options would be like Queen of Hearts or maybe the one cost Arthur. But I don't know if Brandon knows Arthur.
Brandon, do you know what Arthur is? No, you know what?
Yeah, you want me to read it out for you?
Fuck this. No, you guys are always testing me on, is this card good? Brendan doesn't know fucking any of these new cards. So now it's Brendan. Do you know what this card is?
Which one are you asking about?
What's Arthur?
Arthur.
Don't look it up.
Which Arthur? There's many Arthurs.
Yeah, the Arthur that contests Daisy Duck.
The new Arthur.
You mean the one cost 2/3?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
okay,
that has Reckless.
Yeah, he passed the test.
Set number 1, hands off the keyboard right now. Set number 121 out of 204. This is Brian White's art.
21 out of 2. This guy, bro.
Okay.
This guy doesn't know the fucking cards. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what I was trying to say is Gaston gets punished by Befuddle, whereas Arthur and Queen of Hearts don't really. So, and this punishment against aggro might just put you far enough behind that they just win the game. I think aggro is a pretty bad deck, and maybe that doesn't matter too much, but okay. The other deck that could play Daisy Duck is Amber Steel, and Amber Steel, maybe you run into Storm Rage on problems because you're playing a 4-2. I think the two decks that play Daisy Duck are still decently equipped to just deal with a 4-2. But against Red Purple, I think Gaston is the best 2-drop you can be playing.
Sure, that makes sense. All right, before we go on to any particular things that you've been testing, Moyen, there's one other deck here I wanted to shout out just because, again, it's the deck I played. Amber Emerald moving to set 5. A lot of people are asking, like, what tools does it get? Is it actually still going to be a relevant deck? The card I've seen the most be included in these decks is You're Welcome, and I think it's mainly to deal with locations, because previously it was only kind of like bare necessities. You have to kind of snipe a location out of the opponent's hand. It can also hit items. It's very versatile. You can recycle your own characters to get more cards. You can remove your opponent's stuff. This particular version that we're looking at right now also has the 3-drop uninkable Anna in the deck, which I think its main use, again, it has 3 different abilities, but I think its main use is going to be that discard effect, because again, you can use like the muses to bounce this back to your hand, replay it, discard something from your opponent's hand, use John to draw a card. Like, one of the most fun things to do in Amber Emerald is basically just use the muses to continuously bounce your aerial back to your hand. Like, that's like super, super fun. So I also see the 2-cost Ursula 1/4 make it into this list, which was a card I was considering previously to maybe combat against Amber Steel a little bit more, because the Sir Hiss just is so fragile against that particular. But what's funny is for the side events, I just played my Amber Emerald set 4 deck, because I didn't bring a set 5 deck, and I faced all Amber Steel, which is quite funny, and I did okay. I won 1, I lost 1, and I won another one. So yeah, I mean, I hope that this color combination, I think it will still do quite well. We saw it win the first major set 5 tournament in Germany there. So I think it will still be a popular deck, but I just think it might struggle against some steel decks still in general. But I guess we'll see.
No drafts this time, eh?
No drafts.
Yeah, you didn't do any drafts for side events?
Me? Nah. I got there. I got to day 2 at like 12 p.m. because I was so fucking tired after the first day. I barely got any sleep, so I kind of just chilled out. But
fake gamer.
Yeah. How about I actually shut up at the event, Brendan? Yeah. True. But yeah, mine actually, I was curious because I haven't really heard and Brendan, I haven't really heard your guys' opinion in general about this deck. Like, how I was personally very happy to see it win the challenge, obviously because I brought the color combination, but I I really wanted to kind of shine a light on this deck because I think it's a deck that a lot of people weren't used to playing against. Maybe, like I said initially, I didn't consider it to be a very competitive deck. What are your thoughts on it kind of as we round out set 4 and we're going into set 5? Do you guys think it still has potential moving forward? It's still going to have, I think fundamentally this deck is going to have like 50 to 55 like core cards to it that a few things can kind of be altered throughout it, but there's so many cards that combo so well together that I think there's little room for it to be changed around in general. But yeah.
I think the card before the deck before the Bucky Errata was just bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think after Bucky Errata it was a very good bring, and I think I would have brought it to Toronto if I would have went. And now going to set 5, it didn't get a lot, but I don't think it's a little bit like Ember Steel in the previous sets. Maybe it just didn't need to get a lot of new cards, and it's more like what are the other decks doing? Is what this deck wants to do good against what the other decks will want to be doing set 5? So even with just a few additions, like maybe a few, you're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I think the deck's still very, very viable.
Sure. Brennan, thoughts?
This is a deck that I'm not personally particularly interested in, just from a playstyle perspective. And I have to make those choices now. Unless we're actually testing for an event that's happening right now, just due to the availability of playing Lorcana, like I have to kind of choose what decks I want to play, and this is just not a deck I have a lot of exposure to, so I don't feel comfortable giving an opinion on it, to be honest.
Yep, that's fair. Completely fair. All right, with that, not much more to talk about this week's episode. Moyen, if you have any particular things you want to talk about, anything you've been working on, if you've been testing.
I got him. Moyen, best deck set 5 right now. You have to pick. I don't want any explanation. I just want
a color
2 words right next to each other.
Yeah. Ruby Sapphire.
Fuck
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, Brendan.
Like
same question, Brendan. Go.
Bro. Can I give you 3 words?
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to give small explanation. Okay. So
Okay.
I think aggro sucks. Aggro's getting pushed out of the meta by Ember Steel, and then Red Blue is kind of the only deck that consistently beats Ember Steel, and it has pretty good matchups all around. I think Green Purple might replace Red Purple almost, as it does very similar things, but it now has a lot of the tools that it was lacking before in some very sustained pressure with the evasives into maybe then Anna and Elsa to keep fighting for the board, but also the later game threats with the Sewage Queen that it had before already, but also the new Calara Bell. So it might not push out Red Purple completely. I think Red Purple still does some things that Green Purple doesn't do, and Green Purple does some things that Red Purple doesn't do. But Green Purple, I just want to highlight, I think has very good matchup spread, but it actually might no longer beat Red Blue with the Red Blue building around Sisu, and Green Purple no longer really building around Murphox anyways. So I think Red Blue is very well positioned in the meta, but the meta is still completely wide open.
Mm-hmm. I think my initial impressions with not having tested that much set 5 was that I found that Amber Steel was just still incredibly powerful. I think with Daisy on 1, Smee on 2, Lawrence on 3, like obviously that's not like the ideal opener, but to have like these very fast cards on all of these slots, I think is really relevant. I think with the addition of Daisy, the deck can go like really, really fast, and it still fundamentally does what the deck does best, which is the insane Singer Whole New World stuff. Like I think that's just gonna remain to be seen. It's so funny. It's like you look at when Amber Steel came into set 4, and most people were only changing 1 card, which was pretty much just the 1/4 Ursula, which like was, you probably didn't even have to change that card. It definitely did help, but like and right now we're seeing the same thing, right? As I look at your list you've posted here, Moyen, it's like there's 1 new card and it's Daisy Duck. That's it.
So you can be playing Pete, you can be playing Naveen if you want to, but you really don't have to. Mm-hmm. Daisy Duck's like
you really don't have to. I think it's not a bad thing. I think people want to play with the new cards and test like the new stuff, you know what I mean? But I think like Amber Steel has been the deck that's proven like this is still so fundamentally powerful that there's very little that you need to change, and even a slight change like Daisy Duck can still like just kind of keep pushing it towards greatness. I don't know how I've seen like some of the like Perdita versions of Amber Steel and stuff. I don't know how well that deck's going to do in general now, especially if I think a lot of these red-blue decks are really adopting the 3-cost Sisu as removal.
Yeah, that's very painful for them. So it's
Very,
not just the 3-cost Sisu, but also because of that, more of the 8-cost Sisus are being played, which are also extremely good against the boards that Perdita sets up.
Do we think Ruby's finally going to get rid of Brawl in most of their decks now? Do you think Brawl is finally going to be tossed away to the side?
I think there will probably be a balance. I think right now people are cutting it, and then maybe people will just walk up with Emerald Steel that plays Diablo, maybe Emerald Amber, and then maybe you just need to be putting it in again.
Yeah, I think Brawl is just like the Diablo answer. But like if you play Sisu and you have enough ice blocks and stuff like that, then maybe that's just enough, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
maybe we just ban all the good Emerald cards.
oh,
There's a lot of
Prince
them already
John.
now.
you really don't like Emerald at all, Brendan, do you?
No, it's just like no, it's not I don't like Emerald. I maybe don't like Prince John very much, but then Diablo's a bit. It's okay. It's okay. I just don't like playing Brawl in my deck. You know, obviously I'm memeing, but I like to trigger
Is there
our devout Emerald audience. You know, because we always give them so much you know, we give them so much service.
I'm
in
the
this
only
podcast.
person that's trying to help all of our Emerald fans out. I feel I'm a lone
I
soldier
played
here.
green purple in my first challenge event.
You did. That's true. So Brendan, a question: like, is there a particular deck color combination that you want to try out so far in set 5?
Ruby Sapphire for sure.
Yeah, it does look
That's
really
where it's
fun. I think this version of Ruby Sapphire looks super fun.
Sap Steel looks good too. Not gonna lie.
Sap Steel, yeah.
Really, I really enjoy that deck sometimes. And the more combo it gets, the more I like it.
That Donald seems like a very, very strong card. The 5-cost 4. I thought it was a 4/5, 3/4. Yeah, 3/4. Seems like a good card.
Also, I'm down for some Blurple. You know.
I mean, Moyen, you'll test that at least, right? For sure, right? You gotta give it a shot.
Well, I guess new updates from my testing. I played more green-blue. I played more of the item build red-blue in set 5. I think both of those are pretty mediocre so far. So, you know, a lot of the testing goes into decks that end up not being good enough. But that's the part people don't usually see. So like
that's what we talked about on the last episode, Brendan. Was we were like, Spessy cooks so hard with all of these color combinations, and we're like, at least someone does it, because it wouldn't be us. It would not be us. So,
but
yeah.
I'm not going that far in the tank, but
I don't know why you. What do you mean? What do you mean these bad color combinations? Every single thumbnail I see says it's broken.
Oh yeah.
It's
That's how you get the YouTube views, bro. That's what you got to do, you know. I can't wait for Spessy's what's gonna be like Amber Sapphire 100% win rate early set champs deck again. Yeah,
Mono Emerald, best deck in the
Mono
game.
Emerald. My god.
Yo, there was at the Dallas challenge. There was one mono deck.
Wait, in like the main event, there's no way.
There was a mono deck in the main event. Yeah.
What color?
Pretty sure it showed up in the pivot table. Actually, I don't remember. But I digress. Anyway. That's it. That's it for this week.
That's it.
We video version at youtube.com/@Podcana podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts for reviews. Hit subscribe. Twitter's Brendan APG, Moyen_HS, Kawa __ CG. It's on the screen. And yeah, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.